Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Over the Moon. Over the Moon is the directorial debut of Glen Keane, who is a legendary Disney animator. He was the character designer on Little Mermaid, a supervising animator on most of the Disney Renaissance, won an Oscar recently for his film with Kobe Bryant, and now he's finally making his feature film debut with Netflix's Over the Moon. This is very much a animator's movie. The colors pop, they're beautiful. When they get to the moon, the designs are wonderful. The amazing world is just gorgeous to look at. You can tell someone who loves to draw and loves to design things was having a lot of fun, and it is just something you can just fall into visually. The thing about Glen Keane, though, is Glen Keane is known for, designing things and drawing stuff and animating, and then not, story. And you can tell that while watching this movie, because this is not, I think, the best version of this story that we've seen a lot of times. It's like a kid movie staple, basically, but it checks off a lot of kid movie staple boxes. But it's like this little girl who has come to this crossroads in her life because her mother has died, and 4 years later her dad is thinking of sort of dating this woman, or already marrying her or something, which that part of it seems a little too fast. I'm a little with her on that. But maybe they're dating for a while. I don't know. They don't get into that. But it's been a while. So her dad, wants to meet someone else, and has a lot of nervous feelings about that. But she's always heard Legend of the Moon Goddess, that a story her mom used to tell her. She has a lot of faith in that, and she wants to go visit the Moon Goddess. And she's believed in the story for a long time, and they always talk about it during the annual Moon Festival. It's kind of like a story they tell little kids, but she has like a ton of faith in it, and she's always believed in it, and she doesn't want to let it go, and she sort of wants to figure out a way to go to the moon to discover this. There is kind of that idea of like, why does she think of, a legend and science, but, they don't get into that, so whatever. She decides to make this, and when she starts going to the moon and gets there and accidentally kind of brings along her brother, of course, the moon actually brings her up there, and she finds out there is this whole world and there is a moon goddess, and she ends up going on a whole journey and adventure there. Now, this kind of story has been done a lot. I've heard a lot of people bring up like Coco. This studio who worked on this, one of the studios was Pearl Studio, who also made Abominable, which I see kind of also, a young girl going on an epic quest, all those things. Basically, all these films want to be is like Wizard of Oz. And Wizard of Oz, one of the greatest films of all time. I get why you'd want to try to do that. This is not Coco or Wizard of Oz or anything like that. And I think the thing that really faults it is that when you get these films that are either by animators or Disney, or film that aren't at Disney, or films that are like, I'm going to do a Disney film, but like not at Disney, see, because this will work out. It always is someone aping the style. It's never someone like, I'm going to go crazy because now I don't have to work for the mouse anymore. And you think, oh, so you're going to do this crazy, weird movie. And they're like, oh, no, I'm just going to do a Disney movie, but like slightly different. And you're like, why would you leave? Is this really like, did they not pay you enough? I don't understand. It sort of doesn't make sense to me. And this is, I will say, more of a ripoff of Disney in the new age, where it's very much like Broadway, and like, it's always been very Broadway centric, but it feels like recently in the, the Frozen's trying to reference Wicked with the Defying Gravity, Let It Go thing. I know some Broadway things, guys, don't worry. And this feels like there are a lot of songs. I did not realize how many songs. It is like wall-to-wall songs, big epic singing. I'm sure Over the Moon's going to be on Broadway if this is successful enough, or something like that, or maybe that's the plan. I don't know. But it gives you that kind of a vibe that they want to have all these big epic songs. They even have a Hamilton-esque thing. They have one of the voices of Hamilton, Philippa So. She doesn't rap. I guess she sort of raps. I'm sort of not as into Broadway rapping, although I liked Hamilton, but I guess I less like Broadway rapping as we go on. Really, I do like certain elements of this, and I think the animation was wonderful, but I think when they're getting into some of these, music especially feels like it wants to be Disney, but in a way that I kind of question, like, well, what was the point of not making this at Disney? I think that's like often when I see these kind of films, I'm always like, I'm almost more bored by them than if Disney did it, because it's like, well, I feel like they have to do it. You don't have to do this. And Glen Keane's made some comments in the press and things about like, well, this isn't a film that's like chosen by committee. And I'm like, okay, but it's not like, changing my life or anything. So like, I don't know if like what point you're making here. And that just sort of rubs me the wrong way, because it does feel like just I'm watching like Mr. Pibb to Disney's Dr. Pepper or something like that. And I wish oftentimes when you play too close of an imitation to something, it kind of more reminds you of what you're imitating in a negative way than like kind of showing you how different, just a little different and cooler this is. Sometimes you can do that. Very few can do that really well. There's certainly an art to that, but I don't think Glen Keane did that necessarily. I don't also think when you go into these strange new worlds, things aren't necessarily explained that well. It sort of actually reminded me a bit of Mars Needs Moms, because in that it seemed like there's this whole world with all these rules, and it's like I really like to understand this world building and all this stuff, and it like doesn't bother to do that. And like that would be really interesting. They do sort of explain this to a certain degree, but it felt like there was like this whole beautiful, colorful world, and I would love to see a lot of adventures in that, and it looked just like beautiful to look at. Unlike Mars Needs Moms, which didn't look good and it was a really bad movie. This kind of tricks you in a way, because the animation's so brightly colored and it's so cool and it's so wonderful. You sort of want to believe in it in a certain way, and I don't think it does. I think there's probably an amazing art of book, which I think Leonard Maltin worked on. I haven't looked at it because I can't go into Barnes & Noble because it's COVID, but if it wasn't COVID, I probably would look at it in a Barnes & Noble. I'm sure it's a great look. I would love to look for it. Maybe I'd get it because it's a beautiful looking movie. This is kind of what Netflix does. They get animators who have a lot of talent who the studios aren't using. They bring them over to make product for them, which is a smart move, because there's a lot of animators who should have feature films. And I would say when someone said, oh, Glen Keane is making a movie, everyone was excited for Over the Moon, because he's a legend in animation, and it was smart of them to give him this opportunity. I think it was something that Disney probably should have gotten their act together a long time ago. It sounds a little bit, maybe he didn't want to do that there. I don't know. But much like most Netflix things, like the animation is wonderful and gorgeous, but I think we're getting into like someone who's like technically really advanced, but they're not necessarily a storyteller. When we think of the best directors in animation, we think of some of the best filmmakers, frankly, as much storytellers as they are filmmakers. And I think Glen Keane is maybe too much of a filmmaker than a storyteller, because there's just too many plot lines going on. I mean, it's like you have, the daughter, and then you have her almost stepbrother, and then each of them got animals, and then you got the moon goddess, and it's just like, I didn't mind like some of the moon goddess songs. I was like, that's kind of neat, but like the rapping ping pong number, I don't know, guys. And they're just like so many songs and things like that. This sort of reminds me also of when you look at a legendary animator who gets a feature, you think of The King and the Mockingbird, you think of The Thief and the Cobbler, and there's plenty of people who are going to be like, no, Jim, the storytelling is amazing. Neither of those movies is the storytelling clear or great or wonderful, and they just kind of stay in our little animation bubble and never sort of leave it, because like most normal people don't actually want to sit through those movies. And Over the Moon kind of reeks of one of those, where it's like a whole different kind of world, a whole sort of different sort of crazy ass perspective or something. But at the same time, actually this is probably worse than those two by a lot, but at the same time I think that's sort of what hurts it, is that it is being crazy on the moon, and it's kind of a cool idea to go on the moon. It feels very like 1900s or something, to think there's a whole village on there, and not that those kids would go up there and just like die instantly, but no one wants to see that movie. These are interesting to watch, but it is not like a story for the ages or anything like that. It's not a film that really like, I do think it hits like pretty dramatic beats. Like my 3-year-old daughter was like crying a lot after this movie. I think it was too emotional, and it's like doing, the mom is dead thing and talking about loss and everything like that. And usually I find that really interesting. In fact, one of the best things I've seen this year is the Midnight Gospel episode, literally about that. But I think the difference is that this film is trying to almost say like too many things, and I like the idea of what it's saying about loss and letting her dad move on, and the natural order of families, and accepting growth in yourself, and that things are changing through this epic journey. I just feel like there was too many characters. Like then there's like Ken Jeong is playing like a glowing dog or something. He's a lizard. I forget. Even on the poster, it's like there's like too many people. There's too much focus. And I feel like it should have been focused to closer. And like, why are they all split up? Like this whole gang of people. Like storytelling wise, just felt like there was too many things going on. It wasn't convincing enough. It wasn't interesting enough. And I did like that it was telling a different kind of culture story. I found that to be actually really interesting. And I don't know the legend of the moon goddess and anything like that, and how true and accurate it is, and how angry people are at it, possibly, or anything like that. I found some of those things interesting, but it's kind of a film that you would go, oh, that's interesting. Did you see Glen Keane made a movie? Oh, I've never heard of it. And you're like, oh, there's probably a reason why, and all those things. Like, that's what I think from it. You know, this was written by Audrey Wells, who died before this could come out. Apparently she died before her last film, The Hate You Give, even came out, and then she had this film, which is 2 years after that. I enjoyed this film. I think it is an interesting watch, but I think it is more about the animation than it is the storytelling. And it kind of makes you think more so that with these great animator movies, they should focus more on just the storytelling, and it felt like a script that should be whittled down and concise and made a little more, I think, pointed, rather than going in all these different directions and like having, you know, even the younger brother thing, was that really that developed? We had too many animal sidekicks. Like, I think there's like 3, and then you get to Ken Jeong, who is also an animal sidekick. Like, how many animal sidekicks? Like, this movie has too many. Like, you don't need 4. Like, just have like 1. You used to stay at 1, and then maybe another who you forget about, like in Moana or something. You don't need that many. And it just felt like sort of information overload a lot of the time. Like, even these weird like neon chickens who drive motorcycles, like that, those were cool designs, but it's like you didn't really do much. Like, I couldn't tell you their unique personalities at all. You know, like they drew them different, and I think there was like a blue one and a red one or something, and like they got that down, but they didn't get like a distinction, you know. And I think more of these films should like think of, you know, The Wizard of Oz. Like, everyone remembers every part of that movie, pretty much is imprinted on your brain. And I think when you get into these other films that introduce you to a fantastical, crazy world, they don't think of making those things memorable or making a dent or staying on those things and having a reason to stay on those things. It just felt like going from beautifully animated sequence to another one. And it's like, those were all great and beautiful to look at. But when it was all over, I kind of questioned, like, why did we come here? Oh, we're saying this thing about loss, but were we saying that throughout this whole thing? Like, it made me question like the purpose of telling the story this way and saying it with your theme and your lesson and all these things. And it just didn't feel like someone was there to figure out how to exactly tell this story. It felt like there was someone there to animate the hell out of this, and they did a great job, but there wasn't someone there to tell a story. And that's kind of my thing with these like greatly, wonderfully animated films from Animation Legends. You did an amazing job with the animation. You just didn't really think clearly as much about the storytelling. And the storytelling is what made Klaus a great movie, and what Over the Moon, a movie I'll probably watch once, but I'll remember the animation forever. So, you know, it might be a beautiful, gorgeous film, but its sort of inability to really tell a real distinct kind of personalized story that didn't feel like a Disney ripoff, that didn't feel like something I'd seen before, is its ultimate weakness. And I think Glen Keane branching out on his own ultimate weakness is he wasn't unique enough. He's too much Disney really for his own good, and so is this movie. And you kind of leave it going like, I guess that was Disney but different, but maybe I'd much rather watch Disney in the end. So I don't know if you really made your point, but it was a really pretty movie. So if you've seen Over the Moon and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.